Is it the practical form, say, skill-based information, or is it the meaningful information stored in our mental network? Is it the classified information subsumed under higher order inclusive information, say our schemata or something similar to it, or what? Thank you very much for listening to my question, and I'm eagerly all ears to hear about the answer to my question, Dr. Ghazi and Dr. Gamba.
Dr. Gamba, would you like to answer, or should I go ahead?
Yeah, for sure. I prefer you answer this question.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Hamid Reza, for your question. So as I understood it, first, thank you for your kind words, and I'm sure that you can learn a lot from Dr. Kambar. Regarding your question, what makes knowledge, I think I explained it, but perhaps my explanation was not clear enough. I said that in order to claim for knowledge, we need to process information. And in order to have information, we need to process data. The example that I provided was that when we administer a test, suppose that you administer an achievement test to your class that includes 50, 100 students, and then you get 50 or 100 scores. These 50 or 100 scores are considered as raw data because they don't tell you anything about this class. It's through processing this data that gradually you come across some information. So for example, when you order these 50 or 100 scores in an ascending or descending order, then you get close to what changes it into information. You understand what was the minimum score, what was, the maximum score. So you move one step further. The next step is that when you try to calculate the mean of this, set of scores, and then if the scores was from 0 to 20, you get a mean of 16.5. So now it gives you another piece of information from the raw data that you understand that on average, this class performance is 16.5, which is good, which is not very far from the maximum score, which is 20, right? The next thing you can do is to calculate the standard deviation, because then the standard deviation will help you to come up with a distribution curve. And this distribution curve is able to tell you how many students actually located where, and what is the feature of those who are, in the main part of the class. So all of these types of analysis that we do on the raw data help us to understand better and to change the data into information and talk about the class. If you have taught your class in the previous semester, then you are in a position to make comparisons. If the mean of the previous class was 14.5, then you can say that, okay, compared to previous semester, it seems that this cohort of students have a better performance. If you have a lower standard deviation, then you can say that they also seem more homogeneous. So you see, all of these actually help you as a researcher in order to come up with different pieces of information. So you get information about the cohort, about their relationship with the previous cohort and their distribution and all these things. Okay, that's information, and that's good. And this happens in any other discipline and with regard to the analysis of any other type of, data. But when you present this, suppose that you write this report to a journal. They say, so what? Okay, we understand that you had a class of 50 students. You run a test, and the average is 16.5, and the standard deviation is 1.28. So what? So this question of so what you need to again do another level of analysis or interpretation or discussion in order to change these pieces of information into knowledge. So the first thing is, as a researcher, you need to interpret that. So because you are familiar with the Iranian context, with the institute that you are teaching in, with the school, with whatever, so we have a lot to share with your readers, that these are the situations in which we are teaching and the students are learning. And so a score or average of 16.5 means this, means that, it's required for national entrance examination. Lots of things to talk about. So this would be an informed interpretation that for a person who is not familiar with your context, they can make sense of what you have done. But also, if you are going to write a paper, in the literature review section, you need to review related literature, other researchers that have done similar study in other contexts, and then you will be in a position to compare and contrast how your results are compared with other researchers. How are they similar or different? What makes significance about your finding? How your findings can contribute to what has already been found by other researchers. So all of these, which is done in the discussion section of your paper, then change the information that you came across into knowledge. And what's then the use of this knowledge? Part of it would be to expand the frontiers of knowledge that we knew so far. So far, we knew about a student's performance, for example, from 10 studies. Now yours is the 11th one, and therefore it adds another piece of understanding to that body of knowledge that we knew from before. But the other important part is that how other teachers can make use of this information and this knowledge in order to make their teaching and students' experience better. So this is what we mean by knowledge. In fact, processing information, interpreting information, and discussing it in light of the previous research. I used quantitative data and analysis. This can be applied to qualitative data and analysis as well. I hope I gave you the answer.
Thank you so much, Dr. Riazi, for this elaborated clarification and answer. Thank you so much. We have Khanum Azra Tachizi. Khanum Tachizi, you can ask your question if you're still there.
Hello. Many thanks for the wonderful and so insightful session, dear Dr. Riazi and Dr. Gammar. And my question is about the role of theory in qualitative research. And there are many agreements and disagreements that theory is important in the qualitative research or not. We should have in the first, or we should obtain it after our research. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Azra Khanum, for a very important question. The relationship or the role of theory in qualitative research. Conventionally and traditionally, one of the distinctions made between quantitative and qualitative research was that quantitative research is theory-driven, and the role of researcher is to test hypotheses related to that theory, whereas qualitative research is theory generating and generating hypothetical explanations that could be converted into a fully fledged theory if it is done well. And the best example is grounded theory, in that the intention of researchers is to follow a bottom-up approach. Start with data rather than with theory, and then analyze it, and then finally generating some theoretical explanation depending on the level of research. However, I would say, and perhaps some of my colleagues actually are also aware, that there is no consensus on that even in grounded theory. And as you mentioned, the role of theory is not something that could be ignored, even in qualitative research, because the Glacierian version of grounded theory that recommends that researchers should not consult theory until the final stages of generating, theoretical explanations is not valid, in the sense that as researchers, we cannot actually come to research problems with a blank, mind, an idea. As ordinary people, as researchers, we are reading all the time. We are exposed to a variety of, theoretical stances and theoretical frameworks. And therefore, it would be naive if we say that we are not using, theory in our research. And this is why that it's my observation that recently, even in qualitative research, we recommend that students, master's and PhD students, they have a theoretical framework as well, similar to quantitative, research. So regardless of whether it's a quantitative, qualitative, or mixed methods, theory informs us in one way or another. What is important is that we just clarify, and again, this is part of, reflexivity, that I am entering into this research project with this theoretical background and perspective. And so I would say that it would be naive if we say that as qualitative researchers, we should not attend to relevant theories. We should attend from the very beginning, but clarify its role.
Thank you so much, Dr. Riazi. Very good point about the role of theory in qualitative research. And I can say that theory is the basic building block, or the conceptual framework or theoretical framework is the basic building block of the qualitative research, because whether you use inductive coding or deductive coding, we need a conceptual framework to follow. We have some questions in written form. For example, آقای رستمیان asked, when it comes to mixed methods, how can we include and manage all of these criteria in the final report?
Yeah, thank you again for another good question. As I mentioned, actually, there is no need to write about any individual quality criteria related to trustworthiness, let it be qualitative research or mixed methods. What is important is that readers, reviewers of your research report come to conclusion that your research was done with authenticity, with integrity, that it followed microethics. There is justification for the choice of research problem and the formulation of research questions. There is justification for data sources and data collection methods. There is adequate and explicit explanation about the processes that you went through in order to collect and analyze your data. So once more, I re-emphasize that you need to embed any aspects of these four quality criteria of trustworthiness in different sections of your research report. So that as the example that I provided to you, when readers read them, they can see the evidence. They can be convinced that these boxes are ticked, and therefore this is the way that we do it. No need to discuss them separately in different sections.
Thank you so much. A question which was asked here is how can participant access the recording of the session I will put it in our Telegram channel, as you see the address here, so you can access the video from this address 2 or 3 hours after the session. Khanum Rahimi Nejad has a question. Khanum Rahimi Nejad, you can ask your question now.
Okay, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I really thank you for considering such a seminar. It is really informative. Thanks a lot. Actually, I'm from Research Institute for Education, the only research institute which is in Education Ministry. And we normally try to evaluate books, and we evaluate different things. For example, regarding families, I don't know, regarding, economics. And my part refers to Research Institute for Curriculum. And I'm doing research on textbooks somehow right now. And, listening to your points really helped me a lot in order how to manage my research. Right now, I'm in the process of evaluating a new textbook, which is coming to the education system. And I face with some problems. I may explain it, in a way you can help me. I want to know, suppose you are, practically in the real world. Okay, you want to evaluate a book in the process of teaching in the schools, and there is, it happens in 6 provinces. In each provinces, 1 girls' school and 1, boys' school. And then you have in each classes there is, around 30 students with different level of knowledge and skills. And then you have 12 teachers with different, background from different parts of Iran. And then when they teach, I ask them questions, I give them questionnaire, then I ask them to come to a session and discuss over their, answers, and then collect them. And somehow I understood, I try to, somehow consider, the trustworthiness of my work. But I found out, in real world, it is not that much simple. As you said, it needs creativity to, to somehow handle the things. I want to know, if you are supposed to do such a research, what would you do? I'm very, sorry that it is very long questions, but I don't know if you can help me in this regard. If you can give me any suggestion, it would be really helpful for the, education system. Thank you very much.
You are very welcome, Hanum Vidab. And again, your question is very important, and thank you for attending this session, especially as you said, because we are from Education Research Institute. So if I want to summarize your question, you're concerned about whether a newly introduced or included textbook is working or not, is good or not. And therefore, because part of the curriculum is based usually on the type of the textbook that is used, that's a valid question. And Ministry of Education or Board of Education should be concerned about whether this new book actually is more effective than the previous ones. So this type of question and research could be done quantitatively, it could be done qualitatively, it could be done, mixed methods, using mixed methods. And each of these approaches will have its own, data sources and, data analysis. But since you refer to whether or how you can provide trustworthiness for your, findings, then I assume that you are more concerned about the qualitative, aspect, even if you do a mixed methods, because you also refer to questionnaire, which can collect quantitative data from teachers, from students, from parents, and do some statistical analysis. But I focus on the qualitative element and aspect of your research. So basically, part of the quality criteria for your research is that you should have triangulation, data triangulation, method triangulation, and investigator triangulation. At least these are the three types of triangulation that you can attempt to use. Fortunately, you refer to different, data sources. So we already have, data. You can rely on data triangulation because you have the textbooks themselves. So this document, the textbook, and also perhaps its related, materials, instructional materials, guidelines, perhaps, some tests based on these textbooks. All of these are one source of data. There are specific textbook evaluation schemes or sheets that you can use in order to evaluate these textbooks with regard to different aspects of the textbooks, but also their related materials. So this is one data source. The other data source would be class observation, to observe the classes or some of the classes in which this textbook is used, and use again a structured or non-structured approach to classroom observation and collect data and therefore form another data source. The other data source would be interview with teachers, especially because teachers have experience of using other textbooks before. They are in a very good position in order to reflect on the merits or demerits of the book, on how the book, the textbook, the new textbook facilitate their teaching and student learning, or the problems and challenges that they face in using the textbook in their classes. So this is another data source. And also you can interview students. Of course, when you observe the class, part of the data will relate to a student's activities with regard to the new textbook, but also particularly you can interview students and see how they talk about the textbooks. And again, rightly you refer to parents, because nowadays parents are highly involved in their children schooling and learning, so they can have reflections as well. That's very good, because then you have data sources, different data sources that can lead to data triangulation. You can have method triangulation, and even investigator triangulation, because different researchers can do research in different provinces and then come up with findings. Once these data are analyzed, then you need to see to what extent they might converge or diverge. I'm not saying that all the time the outcomes from different data sources might converge with each other. So that would be by itself an interesting finding. If you find out that the textbook works very well in Tehran, for example, or Tehran province, but not in Sistan Balochistan, for example. So that's a very important finding based on the data and the evidence that we can provide for triangulation, dependability, and other quality criteria. So you're on a right track. What you need to do is just to keep a record of these activities, steps, processes, procedures that you go through, and then when you do the analysis, again, keep record of the procedures to data analysis. And at the time of reporting, then it's very important that you provide enough evidence in different parts of the research report so that readers can see actually that these criteria for trustworthiness can be ticked. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Riazi. I think you perfectly framed the study by combining several data sources. Perfect. And the last question, one of the participants asked, why, yeah, he or she said, why don't the university professors accept a dissertation which is based only on qualitative research in PhD?
Why not? I mean, yeah, why not? As far as, and I think I have explicitly explained in my papers that, because, as you know, I'm a mixed method, advocate and researcher, but I have always clarified that this does not mean that other approaches should be downvalued. Each research methodology has its own, merits and advantages, and so the important thing is that to what extent a research question lends itself to quantitative research or to qualitative research or to mixed method research. So if a PhD thesis and the problem lends itself to qualitative research and it is conducted according to the standards of qualitative research, I'm by all means for it. And I would, if I'm supervisor and if I'm an examiner, I examine actually lots of PhD dissertations from different universities across the globe, and especially nowadays, I have seen pure qualitative PhD dissertations, and if the requirements are there, why not? Yeah, I would say.
Thank you so much, Dr. Riazi. I think
Right.
everyone has entered into the spirit of the matter, and it was a very fruitful and informative presentation. And I hope we can have such presentations in a not so distant future with you and other problematic and controversial issues. I think we are done, and if you have any further comments or ideas, we can hear, or if not, we can close the session now.
Yeah, I should thank you, Dr. Kambar, for arranging this session. And I should also thank everyone who attended this session. I'm sure that many of my colleagues actually have attended. I'm sorry that I cannot refer to the names because I might forget one or two, but I appreciate their attendance into this session, and I hope that the discussion have been useful, especially for early career, because I'm sure that my colleagues know about these things, but hopefully early career researchers and postgraduate students have a better understanding of what trustworthiness in qualitative research is and how they can go about ensuring it in their research reports and research process.
Thank you so much, Dr. Riazi. Thank you so much. To reiterate, we have the slides and recording of the session from tomorrow in the channel that I put the address in the chat box.
Great.
And I want to add this point that we had Peter DiCosta, but I think he left because he had to attend another session. But we had it, I think, in the first half of the session. Just want to add this point.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Riazi, and thank you so much, everyone, and good night.
Thank you, and have a great evening. Yeah.